The year 2023 has been a crazy one in the world of Canadian MMA, and it's now time to look at what's the best stuff that happened year round as we recap with our Canadian MMA Awards of 2023. And today we're looking at the comeback of the year, which is a very different category from the comeback fighter of the year, which will be coming in the next few days. For the comeback of the year, it's really a comeback within a fight that a guy was not winning and then went on to win by a way or another. So we're not looking at the comeback fighters, those who were out for a long time and came back or whatever. That's gonna be a video for a different day, but today we're really looking at who were not winning the fights and then turned it around and ended up winning the fight. As usual, before we get going, I like to go into some honorable mentions, and they are as follow: Isaiah Meditok against Jesse Arts at Fight League Atlantic 8, Suaib Damani against Irving Molina at Samourai MMA 5, Tony Rojas against Nico Cambasis at Unified 50, Shane Campbell against Daryl Orcher at Unified 54, Tom O'Connor against Craig Shintani at Unified 54, and Matt Dawson against Benebi Otoru at PFC 60. Let's go for number 10, as we've got Mitch Strazzella against Manny El Hefnawi at BFL 77. This was an amazing back and forth fight. It's one of the good fights we've seen this year, but we had to feel like Manny was kind of getting the upper end in that fight. Probably won the first round. The second round was tight, but you could really see that Manny was landing the more impactful blows, in my opinion, in this fight. As Mitch, even though he maybe was not winning on points, was still pushing a crazy pace and creating the action, and turns out that it paid off in the end, because clearly towards the end of the second round, Mitch was the fresher fighter and he just started putting on Manny, who looked tired, looked like he was overwhelmed by the situation, and Mitch was able to get the TKO win with a little more than a minute left in the second round to really turn it around and get a great comeback win in this fight. At number 9, it's Steve Sampaio against Gino Ghalehpardaz at Prospect Fighting Championships 16. Gino was doing good in that fight. It was a good fight, another back and forth, but Gino was able to get to the takedowns, get to the dominant grappling positions, and even though Steve was a very tough opponent to deal with on the ground, the guy is always active, always looking to better his position, to create scrambles, to create submission opportunities from his back, and Gino was traveling through that pretty well. Let's say he was able to win the first round of the fight, but in the second round, Steven was able to create an amazing scramble where he caught a guillotine in transition and was able to finish that guillotine quite suddenly to get an upset win here, as he was only 1-0 when he defeated the 3-1 fighter on a 3-fight winning streak. So a major win for Steve, a major comeback for Steve, and a major way to put his name into the flyweight discussion in Canada. At number 8, it's Marc-André Barriault against Julian Marquez at UFC 285, and I remember this fight being so weird because I was quite confident for Barriault going into this fight. We knew that Marquez was an absolute wild man, a guy who was gonna go crazy and was gonna tire himself doing so, but we never expected how dominant Marquez would be in the first round of that fight. He was really outstriking Barriault quite easily, and it looked like Barriault couldn't really get into his rhythm. But when the first round finished, you could clearly see that it took a lot from Marquez to be fighting like that, and clearly Barriault was not winning at all, but looked like a fresh fighter and a guy who was ready to go for round 2. Marquez looked a little less fresh, a little bit more tired, and you could clearly see that as soon as round 2 started, because Barriault completely flipped it around, started dominating the fight, and was able to use his patented clinch attack to just put Marquez against the fence and elbow him until the referee just put a stop to this contest. So a very tough first round for Barriault in that one, but super dominant in the second, is able to get the TKO victory, and that really kickstarted a good year for Marc-André Barriault, who is now in position to fight against a top 15 fighter in his first fight of the year in Toronto. So great victory for Barriault and great way to start the year off for him. At number 7 is Julius Trimmeliti, Jimmy Foster at BTC 22, and it was absolutely wild for the time that it lasted. Only one round, well, less than one round. Foster really put Trimmeliti on the ropes a couple of times there. He was able to, he's just so powerful, he's so crazy, and he attacks from weird angles, so he's tough to deal with, even for a younger and fresher fighter. But yeah, Jimmy really put it on Julius, who was able to snatch a guillotine out of nowhere somewhere late in the first round and just get the finish in that fight when you thought that he was having a tough time, not to say a bad time in that fight. So good stuff for Julius Trimmeliti, who was back for the first time in a while Good return for him, good comeback to action, and a great comeback win. At number 6, we've got Xavier Nash against Navid Zanganeh at BFL 76, a lightweight championship fight. That was one of the good fights this year, one of the real technical displays of wrestling and grappling that we got to see. And Xavier Nash started off well. We always knew that Navid probably had a little wrestling advantage in that fight, but it was going to be tough for him to set these takedowns up against a very good wrestler and grappler in Xavier Nash. And Nash was probably able to win the first round on my cards, then went on to, in my opinion, lose the 3 next rounds. Turns out that in the end, some of the judges gave some of these rounds to Xavier Nash. But heading into the 5th, there was 2 possible options. Either it was 2-2 or either Navid was up 3-1 against Xavier Nash, who had to, one way or another, pull out an amazing 5th round to be able to secure the victory in that fight. And that's what he did. Probably came out with one of the best rounds of his career. Really put it on Navid and was able to secure a 10-8 in that round, which, if you had scored the 3 first round for Navid, gave a draw in that fight. But like I said, some of the judges had given one of the rounds between round 2 and round 4 to Xavier, so that gave him a split decision win in that fight, in which he mounted an amazing comeback in round 5 to grab the victories from the jaws of defeat and become the BFL lightweight champion. At number 5, we've got my guy Papa Ju, Julien Leblanc against Chris Chapman at Unified 53, which was an event held in Ottawa, right next to Gatineau, where Julien is from, and he had sold a lot of tickets for that event. As usual, he came out really slow in the first round, was not winning that fight at all, really looked off his game, and in round 2, I think fortunately for him, Julien got dropped in the very beginning of the round, and that's really what woke him up in that fight. After he got dropped, Julien was able to get back to his feet immediately and absolutely turned it on from there. Was able to grab that second round, even though he got dropped, was able to win that second round in the end and absolutely dominated from there to get a good comeback victory, to take the first round off like that and get dropped in the second and still be able to win, which was a quite convincing decision in the end, in my opinion. That really goes to show how getting dropped just woke Julien Leblanc. Good stuff from him. That gets number 5 on the list. As we move on to number 4, Jared Revel against Bruno Santos at BFL 77. And like, I won't lie to you guys, I was really not looking forward to this fight, and that's not because of Jared. I love Jared Revel, he's amazing, but Bruno Santos gave us some of the worst fights we've seen in MMA history. The guy was in the UFC, bored us to death. Everywhere he went after that, bored us to death. And he was looking on his way to bore us to death against Jared Revel, taking him down, really being a blanket on top. And Jared was doing stuff, was trying to not be blanketed. But Bruno Santos is a very good control grappler, and he was getting the best out of Jared there. And in an instant, basically in an instant, Jared just found a way to get to the back and choked him out cold. Like very sudden change of momentum in that fight. Jared basically didn't win no part of that fight except for the last 30 seconds where he got the reversal, took the back and got the choke, and just won the actual fight in the end because he slept his opponent. So amazing comeback. Gets number 4. Top 3 time, and at number 3, it's Rob Protomanni against Matt Bednarek at PFC 15. And that was kind of heartbreaking because I like Matt Bednarek a lot. The guy is amazing. He had a tough start of his career, 0-2, and really came into that fight with Rob Protomanni fired up. He was able to win most of the fight and really be dominant and look to be on his way to win for the first time of his career, until in the 3rd round, Protomanni got a good position on top and it was working from there, and Bednarek trying to stand up and open the opportunity for the guillotine, which Protomanni jumped on. An absolute sudden change of momentum and an amazing comeback victory for Rob Protomanni in that fight. And that's why he gets number 3 on the list. At number 2 now, Maxime Soucy, Nick Ouellet, BFL 77. Maxime Soucy knew what he was doing there. It's a great comeback victory, a great come from behind win to get the title. But Maxime Soucy kind of knew what he was doing here. Let's just face it, because he knew that Nick Ouellet was gonna come out strong and was gonna look to grapple him and put him in the worst positions ever, and that's exactly what he did, and that's exactly what happened. Basically, I feel like Max Soucy kind of got saved by the bell in the first round. He was in a reverse triangle, and yeah, he looked like he was breathing. He looked like he was able to stay composed in that position, like he did all round. Basically, Nick Ouellet had his back for a major portion of the round, was able to work on submissions, work on positions in a very dominant fashion. But Soucy kept his calm. Soucy kept working and being very defensive and just making sure that, yeah, he may not be winning that round, but he's not in great danger of being submitted, because he knew that if he was able to defend the grappling attacks of Nick Ouellet, Nick was going to get tired doing that, and Max would later on in the fight be able to capitalize on that. And maybe the only thing that was surprising in that for Max Soucy is that it happened earlier than expected. In the second round, Ouellet was able to land another takedown, work on the ground a little bit, but when Soucy got up, you could clearly see that Nick Ouellet was taking some big breaths, looked for some other takedowns, was stuffed very easily, and at that point you just knew that like he was stuck on the feet against an amazing striker in Max Soucy, and Soucy went to the body and went to the body again, and then finished with an amazing body kick. One of the greatest finishes this year, was featured on my KOs of the years list too, and what an amazing comeback to get the belt, Maxime Soucy. But at number one, listen, I had no choice. It's Isaac Blais. It's Isaac Blais against Mauricio Cruz at Samourai MMA 6 in Gatineau. Isaac coming in at home against a very tough opponent and a very underrated opponent, because Mauricio Cruz never wins when he comes to Quebec, but he always comes very, very close to winning every fight. And this fight is the best example of all that. First round, Isaac Blais doing his stuff, winning the round quite handily. Second round, they're fighting, and then in the clinch, Mauricio is able to hit some elbows, hit some knees, and it starts to wear on Isaac Blais a lot, and Mauricio's working hard from then, and then he drops Isaac, and I won't lie to you, like, this fight probably should have been stopped. Honestly, this fight probably should have been stopped. I'ma still give Isaac the benefit of the doubt, because yes, every time the referee was so close to jumping in, Isaac was moving a bit. Isaac was doing some stuff to look like he was intelligently defending himself. In the end, the bell rung and the round was over, and Isaac stood up on his feet and went to his corner, and I won't say that he looked great, but he didn't look like he was stumbling. He didn't look like he was out of it at all. So he was able to continue the fight, to go to see a round 3, and in round 3, he just kept his range, used his kicks and his long range tools to keep Mauricio at bay, and then shot for his own takedown and submitted Mauricio Cruz by arm triangle choke in round 3 with like 10 to 15 seconds to go in the fight, in a fight where best case scenario, if it went to the judges, Isaac was getting a draw. Like, there's no way that round 2 was not a 10-8. So best case scenario, if it got to the judges, Isaac was not winning that fight. It was a draw, and he was really able to grab the finish out of nowhere in that fight. And to, like, if there was any doubts that this fight should have been stopped, that this fight should not have went past the second round, when Isaac just finished his opponent in round 3, he just showed us that probably, whatever our feelings are about that, the right decision was made in that fight. And Isaac Blais with just one of the craziest comeback wins you're ever gonna see. And in his return to action too, the guy had been out for a while, went from basically getting finished in round 2 to finishing his opponent in round 3. That's, of course, the comeback of the year without any hesitation. Isaac Blais against Mauricio Cruz at Samourai MMA 6. And that concludes my list for today. Stay tuned for the other lists and the other end of the year content on MMA Talk. Subscribe if you don't want to miss any of that. Leave us a like, a comment, anything would be appreciated. Thank you guys. See you next time.